And welcome everyone to another episode of the Uncensored Truth podcast. We got a special live stream that we're doing with two, of our business partners now. Very important, brothers in the Black community, period, in the community worldwide. So we kind of just sitting around talking, and there's a lot of misconceptions about Black fraternities and Freemasonry. So we better to bring it to you. The two brothers who have had, either are in or have been in a fraternity or involved with Freemasonry. So I'm Brother Ogai, Hip Hop News Uncensored. I'll let Sandman introduce himself, and we'll get rocking.
What up? Y'all already know who it is. It's your brother Sandman, Viral Hip Hop News. We in the building, like Ogai said, with our brothers Darrin and Khonsu. Y'all remember them? We had an explosive interview probably a couple weeks ago now. Talked about a lot, big business, hip hop, and various things. And now we got them on to talk about Freemasonry, fraternities, the misconceptions, the history behind it. It should be an awesome show. Brother Darrin, Brother Khonsu, the floor is yours. What's going on? How y'all doing this evening?
Man, chilling, man. Chilling.
Yeah, all is great, man. Everything is wonderful, man. Love and life, man.
Really, though, yeah.
Good to have you on. Oh, God, do your thing.
Yeah, man. So just open it up, man. Let's talk about Freemasonry. First, let's talk about fraternities, because I'm sure that probably comes first. You come out of high school, you go into college, and most people that I see go to college, I'm mad that I missed this opportunity in life, because it seems like they had a great experience meeting people, the stuff they learned. And the time that I did go to college, I can remember, the classes and just getting so much more out of it than I did high school. It was just so different. And I actually excelled in college, and not as much as high school, I wasn't that. I was like a C student, but college I did very well. But a lot of people go out to these colleges and they get into these fraternities, the Psi Alphas, whatever the name of them is, no disrespect. And we don't understand it. I'm not a college dude like that. And then we see, the Freemasonry part, how like 10 years ago, so that was kind of, pushed upon people on YouTube as like devil worship. So start us from the colleges. Either one of you can go first. What are sororities and what do they do?
Well, I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Gamma Chapter, now YKK Chapter, Upsilon Kappa Kappa, and so I'm again a member of their fraternity. So fraternities are about brotherhood. Really, it's about a group of how a group of men of like minds and like attainment can get together and achieve a lot by changing a lot in the community. So if you look at a lot of prominent, members of my fraternity, you'll see the levels of changes and the type of activity that's going on in the community. So we were actually the second Black fraternity that was founded, but we were the first one that was founded at a Black college. That was Howard University. So
I would just tell quick announcement to the brothers on, just make sure that when you're not talking to mute, because it's like feedback comes in, so you can remember that. But Brother Khonsu, the floor is yours. You can explain if you're involved in a fraternity, let the people know some of your experiences, please.
Well, I wasn't directly involved, even though fraternities are annex organizations of Masonic fraternities. All of it is fraternal, and it has an order structure. Particularly with African American organizations, we're talking about the first literary society, which was Alpha Phi, in 1872, and they started at Howard University. You had Sigma Pi Phi, which is a non-collegiate fraternity, and basically for professional people. That was founded in 1904. A lot of the Masonic guilds had annexed a lot of professionals to actually organize, structure, and network with each other with these three. You had quite a other few, Gamma Phi, that came out of Wilberforce University, Pi Gamma Omicron at Ohio State back in 1905, Alpha Phi Alpha at Cornell University, and so forth and so on. These were African American organizations. And you also have, of course, the North American fraternities and sorority system that started with Phi Beta Kappa, generally speaking, with most European fraternal organizations in 1776. And the purpose was for networking and creating a commonwealth with common interests and people that had common goals and needs, and they wanted to use each other to network and help each other. That's really what the establishment of fraternities and Masonic lodges were about.
Right. Brother Darrin, when we talked earlier, you told me about that your particular fraternity was the first African American one started, right?
No, actually, Alpha Phi Alpha was the first black fraternity that was started at Cornell University. So
okay, at Cornell University.
Yeah, Cornell. We began at Howard University. So we first at a black college.
So my question is, what was the need for, black people to start their own? Like, what was the reason behind that?
We saw that we weren't being included in a lot of the activities. So that's really why we had this group of men that came together to say that we're going to swear this oath to each other. The Omega Psi Phi our other name is the Friendship Fraternity. So it's about friendship. And you had these men that came together that said, you know what, no matter what, we're going to always be friends. And they got together and said, it just so happens that, everybody needs a friend. It costs a lot to be a friend. And to really say that somebody is your friend, you want to take it to the next level. And that's what we've done. So we're the Friendship Fraternity.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Okay, now talk about a little bit when it comes to the Freemasonry aspect of the conversation, because we all know the history, or for those who don't know the history, predominantly the people ignorant to the conversation, they think it's a predominantly white organization started in Ireland, but they don't really know the true history behind how us as black males, us as blacks began in the Freemasonry. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it started with a gentleman by the name of Prince Hall. So talk a little bit about the beginning and the essence of Freemasonry and how it began from its roots. I would love to hear both perspectives, please.
Khonsu, you want to go ahead and go first?
Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Well, Masonry is a cultural thing. Masonry started firstly out of Africa. The ontology or the psychology of understanding the human experience beyond physical and grasping the metaphysical aspects of the existence of our Creator, and then applying that understanding to different facets in society, which then became in the universities known as the liberal arts, which were consisted of a lot of things like mathematics, architecture, oratory skills, critical thinking skills. And so you develop those things in order to have a balanced psychological disposition towards development and diversity of people of all colors, creeds, so that you would be able to travel, henceforth the traveling man, that's what we would use a term as, to be able to communicate with all walks of life, no matter what their cultural background was. And so that was the development coming out of Africa that then influenced the Greeks, the Romans, somewhat the Persians, into developing certain fraternities. Those fraternities early on were called vassals. And these vassals were extensions of the guilds or tradesmen that were developed in the early ages, especially going into the medieval ages, when you had the medieval guilds of European influence. But Europeans did get their influence from Africa. This is what Prince Hall felt. When he started the Prince Hall jurisdiction coming out of the Scottish Rite, he wanted to annex, and he created African Lodge number 459 because he saw that the psychology and the ontology surrounding African science, like the Akan, when they created the Adinkra symbols, were equivalent to African understanding towards physics and the occult understanding of these things. So they in turn adapted and standardized a cultural perception of an ancient practice.
Dope. That was real dope. Brother Darrin, your perspective.
So yeah, I'm an entered apprentice in the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So I haven't taken it to the level, obviously, of Brother Khonsu. But it's more of a philosophical way of approach of looking at things, as opposed to a theological way of approaching life. And again, it's a fraternal organization. So it's about the universal brotherhood of man and what we all have in common from a philosophical point of view.
Right. I want to brothers too. I'm gonna get into this. Could you explain the degrees that we all hear about, and what would it take for someone to actually join, to become a member, of such an organization?
Ask. In short, Khonsu could probably speak more to that though. Just to be honest with you, man.
Yeah, that's actually it in a nutshell. You got to ask one to be one. Normally, it's an hereditarial thing. When we're talking classic masonry, it's a hereditarial thing. You'd have to ask one to be one for the simple fact that the ancient masonry, before it was standardized, you were not allowed to wear symbols. You couldn't wear the jackets and the hats. That wouldn't have been allowed because it was a fraternal secret organization. And it was secret due to the fact that from the African perspective, there was a lot of danger knowing that you may have been affiliated with large groups of people because of your ability to tap finance, or you may be influential with people. So it put you at risk. So it was not something that was just publicly spoken about. And of course, with the modernization of masonry came degrees. When we talk about masonry before it was standardized, we're talking about Egypt, what is some people call Kemet, and that created rites, particularly the Memphis rite, that had 96 degrees. However, those rites came from the 360 degrees that were found in the Memphis rite, Heliopolis, Thebes rites. So they were cosmological, meaning that they were very allegorical. They were not literal, and the scriptures were rendered into an allegorical understanding. So when the Europeans of today, their forefathers took the Egyptian text, they created a European standard of 33 degrees. But those degrees are symbolic degrees of knowledge. They're not necessarily degrees that you would find in a school or a college. They were more cosmological degrees based on your development and understanding of the psyche.
Excellent. It's funny you say that because when I used to work at a car dealership like years back, I had like a one of those all CNI shirts with a pyramid, and I guess one of the dudes that worked there was the Freemason. So he told me, he's like, you know anything about that? I was like, a little bit. He's like, you could be killed for that? He said something like that. And I'm like, damn, why did he say that? So now I kind of get why, he said that. But yeah, that's kind of dope, man. But I want to talk about the not to get too deep in it, because I know it's a fraternal organization for a reason. Obviously, we don't want to put everything out there, but a lot of people will talk about, and it's been in hip hop and a lot of Illuminati videos, homosexual rituals that people have to do in order to move up. They have to put you in something to make sure that you don't ever go tell, you know what I mean? So elaborate on that. I know I'm going with it.
Well, the cardinal principles of Omega Psi Phi are manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. So the first thing that you're going to stand on is your manhood, and no man would ask another man to do that, to do anything of a homosexual nature. So that really, that's that right there. That's just something that we see as crazy when we hear about it. I do hear about people say, "Oh, you got to do this nasty stuff." You're like, "Man, are you crazy, man? I'm a man first, man." There's no way I would do no crazy shit like that, man. But yeah, that's really, man. It's about a group of men of like mind and like attainments getting together and saying that we are going to work together and accomplish this goal as friends. And it doesn't take a lot. We say 8 men thoroughly immersed in full Omega spirit are far greater than 80 with lukewarm enthusiasm. So we believe in small numbers, we can accomplish more. And as Black people, you know, when even that's like, it speaks to us in small numbers, we can accomplish more. And I think that takes, you know, why there's secret fraternal organizations that hold a degree of secrecy, because if someone is willing to make that commitment and take that commitment to secrecy and to keeping things close to them, then we can accomplish more. We can build.
What I got another question. 2 questions. First, what are the major differences between the Black, Freemason, the lodges you will go to, and the white ones? We'll start with that one. If Brother Khonsu wants to answer that.
Yeah, the popular argument between the European Freemason and the African Freemason is the term called amity, which is giving charter or paying charter dues to your Grand Lodge. Most of the African American based lodges do not agree with the Grand Lodge of England. That does not, and it's really titled the UGLE, which is the United Grand Lodge of England. We do not have a cultural connection to that. And Freemasonry is an open learning system that just happens to be fraternal. So we have certain rights like international, ancient, free, and accepted, Prince Hall, that are looked at as irregular. Prince Hall recently received annexed permission to be part of the Scottish Rite paradigm not too long ago. And so, but honestly, it's only based on amity that one would be called clandestine and another one would be called a regular lodge, or clandestine means irregular. But when one understands Masonic jurisdiction, or what we call jurisprudence, it's actually clandestine that in which the way the lodge operates. And clandestine means quietly and operatively. And we contemplate speculatively on fraternal order and structure. And like the brother Darrin said, with moral character. So one must believe in a higher power of some sort and have honor and respect in it, and have honorable values coming out of that belief system. That is why a lot of times you'll see a lot of nationalist groups that borrow a lot of Masonic structure, but the one mistake is the term atheist. That's not even in the African construct. That's not, an atheist is a culturally Greek construct that came from certain Greek fraternal orders. And this is why the Black fraternities were established as well, because our culture did not have an atheistic paradigm, because we understood the dynamics of nature and things like that. We understood the allegorical aspects of religion. And so sometimes we get mistaken for some of the isolated Masonic groups. And, it happens because we're in the same, genre.
Dope. Well, Brother Ogai seems, I know he has another question, but real quick, let me interject. Illuminati. We hear that word often. Give the dictionary terminology for the word Illuminati, what it means from a dictionary perspective and what it means in 2018.
I was gonna say, yeah, go for it, Khonsu.
The Illuminati term it's taken an evolution. So when you talk about the ancient term Illuminati, you're talking about a Bavarian group of separatists that had an issue with their government, starting with the creator of the Illuminati, which was Adam Weishaupt. So they had a cultural difference with the communistic views in the Bavarian culture to how they felt that they were being treated governmentally. So they created a group called the Illuminists, and some of them that were Gnostics that were illuminated, meaning they had inner knowledge and wisdom of the sacred texts, ancient texts. ancient Bavarian texts, ancient Nordic texts, ancient Egyptian texts. They had knowledge of that, and so they were illuminated with thought, and they had inner light. It was none of the modern twisted Bohemian Grove stuff. Like, there's no connection to any of that stuff. That was more conspiracy theory. And today, your Illuminati would be certain cliques that deemed themselves superior towards others. I mean, you see the Illuminati rampant through a lot of the music business. You'd have Cash Money versus Master P's group. These are Illuminati people because they would take that moniker that was standardized in modern interpretation.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, how will someone recognize another Mason? Do you guys, because you see like the videos on YouTube and you see people, you know, the signs that people throw up and everything. And is it a certain way, like if you and Darrin seen each other, was it a certain handshake or a certain way you could communicate that will make you identify, you know, a Mason? I'm actually out to give too much away.
First, I say, "What's going on, black man? How you doing, man?" Because that's the first brotherhood we all a part of, man.
There are, oh God, something else, man. There are handshakes and symbols that one would use to identify one another. And there are certain languages, and sometimes there are certain ways that you may say or use particular words that a person would understand that you're part of the craft that's called Masonry. So yes, it is very fraternal and very secret because it's protecting a brotherhood is very important. And more particularly with African men is very important.
That's a good, you know, it's good that you say that because it gets me to the other, you know, the part of morality. You said protecting another brother. Now, at what point, like, where does the line cross? What Masons are, you know, where if a brother's out there, you know, on killing sprees or whatever he's doing, do you still, if he's still in that, you know, fraternity and he's in your lives, do you protect that? Like, how deep does it go? I know this is kind of, you know, this is rough, but this question that I have, you know.
Yeah, I can dig it, man. I totally can dig it. Yeah, obviously, if you see someone that's on a murdering spree or committing crimes against humanity or society, you know, you have to be able to turn that person in, even though that's your friend. You love your friend, but what would you do for a good friend? What is a friend willing to do for another friend?
Yeah, definitely. Darrin said it really well because, you know, we have a system of morals that are put in place that will not allow you to harm someone else. You know, it's all about justice and being lawful and not creating havoc or being a problem in your community. Actually, it's about charitable service and being of service to your community. So it's actually the opposite. If someone wants to do something like that, they're going to be demitted from the lodge immediately, and they'll definitely be dealt with by the authorities because we're not here to harbor any psychopaths, sociopathic people of the sort. So no, that wouldn't be allowed in a Masonic structure.
That's real dope. You go ahead, Sam, man, if you want to ask some more questions. That's all I got for
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna start transitioning a little bit because there's a lot of compare and contrast with the Illuminati and Freemasonry. Is that a fair compare and contrast? Where did that come from? What was its origins in that? And why do people so loosely compare them in 2018 if they have one not to do with the other?
I'd say it's all based on secrecy, and how secret societies have received such just a bad received a bad rap. And then as people get to the upper echelons of Hollywood and upper echelon of whatever business, there's that extra level of secrecy that happens. So a lot of times we associate, secrecy with conspiracy. That's what, that's to keep it all the way 100, man.
Yeah, I mean, the Illuminati did take the Masonic structure. They took the hierarchy and the infrastructure and created the Illuminati. So yeah, you do have some relationships to that because the structures are identical. However, the purposes are totally different for that time period. And even when the Illuminati were present, they didn't have the same connotative meaning that goes on today. That is a lot of speculatory things. Those are a lot of speculatory things that came from the fact that Masons will openly tell you, no, this is a secret. This is fraternal. It's just like if we had, you look at, let's say, a black nationalist group, or you look at a white nationalist group. They don't go on internet telling you what the inner workings are. Why? Because it's fraternal between each other. Well, but those organizations are very volatile towards structure and order on every level. And that's what separates the Illuminati from the Masonic lodges, because the Masonic lodges were not designed to be revolutionary, as more so giving structure, morals, and teaching brotherhood and manhood to young men and older men, and creating a elder descendancy relationship. But in the Illuminati, it was more social political, because that's what that was birthed out of, a social political conditioning system that they were against. And they were a byproduct of when you had a lot of those social political entities that were forming. The Orientalism, the active Orientalism, colonialism, feudalism, industrialism, communism, Marxism. A lot of these things started developing around that time period. And that's why the Illuminati were formed as a socialist group.
Right. Would you be able to identify? I have a few more questions too. Any like people in entertainment business, presidents, rappers, that are Illuminati?
Y'all forgot y'all was,
Freemason.
y'all forgot y'all was on the Unsaid the Truth, right?
It
Y'all
says
forgot.
straight up Illuminati, man.
Yeah, y'all forgot. Y'all name them now.
Well, I members of Omega Psi Phi, Shaquille O'Neal, he's one. He's also a Mason at the same time. And what you'll find is a lot of this men that are in Omega Psi Phi also overlap to Freemasonry. It's just the way it is. All of our founding fathers were Freemasons as well. So Shaquille O'Neal, you got Dr. Charles Drew. He's the reason that we're able to give blood transfusions to this day. If anybody has heard of ROTC, ROTC is came from the Student Army Training Corps that was founded in Wilberforce, and that was they're looking for a way to train young Black college men how to become military officers, and so that's why you may see Omegas wearing the camouflage pants because we have that history. Bill Cosby, he's a more infamous member, but he is still a brother of Omega Psi Phi. Vernon Jordan, Jesse Jackson. You'll see a lot of politicians also.
Right. Now I'm gonna jump into the whole racial thing again. Brother Khonsu was speaking about the charters and whatnot. Do white Masons recognize you guys? Like if you were to see like a white Mason, did it, is it since the lodges had to be separated because you said they wouldn't at first, are they doing it now? And two, can women join? And if they can't, why not?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the latter first. With women joining Masonry, they have an auxiliary order called the Eastern Stars, the Order of the Eastern Star. The reason why the women would not directly join the Masonic lodges was because of the disruption of males and females interacting with each other and socializing outside of actually building and moving progressively as an order. So they kind of created an auxiliary means for women to be able to independently express themselves as scholars and develop women's developmental skills, and men separate. And a lot of the events, though, like conventions and banquets and stuff like that, they would operate in unison. As far as the European Mason and Black Masons, yes, just like there's still racism, white supremacy in America, there's heavy racism in Masonry. Most of the time, you won't get direct associations or affiliations, even though lawfully they cannot bar a person racially. But there's some that will, especially heavy in the southern region of the United States. Is highly racial. This is why a lot of Black fraternal organizations like Omega Psi Phi, and then you had Alpha Phi Alpha, that would generally give hereditary Masonic rights to those that would join, that were younger, going into sororities and fraternities. So, because it was a need, because as Africans Americans, we were not respected as having the knowledge or the aptitude to understand things at a high scholarly level. So, and it's still prevalent to this day. It is very prevalent. Racism is very prevalent.
Would you say that's why Prince Hall started, or one of the reasons why he started his form of masonry, our own form of masonry, because he's seen maybe or felt some of the racism and prejudice that was going on back then? Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely. With Prince Hall, that was the epitaph for Prince Hall. That was his whole motivation at the time, was when he started, which is called PHA, which are fraternal Masons, that we were not represented culturally. And so it was a need to represent our culture based on our African influence, as we were slaves brought here against our will. And we were already practicing Masonry from a cultural aspect that was not represented in the American paradigm. You did have other rites, like the York Rite, which was another American Masonry that was founded, that did have some Blacks, but it did not give credence to our culture, because certain documents and things like that that are read Masonically did not include African Americans. So as that happened, Prince Hall and other Black Masons wanted to represent themselves culturally in the world of Masonry.
Right. I want to talk about I seen a few movies all the time, man. Like we see in the background, Khonsu's background, he has the all seeing eye and everything. And I think I don't forget what movie it was, but it was a movie where they went into a pyramid and they made it seem like it was like they was getting attacked. People started getting attacked by like it was like demons or something inside the pyramid. But the reason I'm laying this out, because it seems like through Hollywood and through almost everything that we have, it seems like they try to make Egypt or our culture, seem like it's scary or dark or the devilish, and that's the way I see it. So why is that? I want to hear from Brother Khonsu, why you think that is.
Yeah, definitely, because of the need for culture over academia. We had a cultural understanding of science at a natural level. And I could give you an example. A hunter in Africa will be able to judge wind direction, weather, by the way blades of grass would move. They can tell if an animal was moving through the blade of grass, or if it was atmosphere change, a storm may be coming, a sandstorm, or things of that nature, because that's the type of science at that level, at that time, we studied. So it became, of course, standardized over the evolution of Masonry, but we were dealing in a very ancient form of science. And because of that, when the European invaders came across us, we were building pyramids. We were dealing in math. We understood how to write in a complex format. When you look at certain publications like the Papyrus of Ani or the Pert Hemeru, which is the Book of the Dead, when you look at a lot of funerary texts, we were writing very direct in the form of what is called allegory, meaning that we had the concepts of writing stories that were mythical. So we weren't just some lowly bush people that had absolutely no intelligence. Actually, it was the reverse. We were giving them understanding of things on such a deep level that they standardized it for their culture. But we were doing it 10,000 years prior than the term Masonry.
Right. Now, with that being said, not to go too far off, but these are questions that we have. Me and Sam and I always talk about this. How do we go from, you mentioned building pyramids, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that's been, they don't have the capability of really duplicating that to this day. how do we go from that and all the accomplishments that we did and, you know, being geniuses and whatnot to where we are now? How does that happen? How does, they say, a creature, an invader, you know, come in and turn things around to where it is right now? I really don't. I'm trying to fathom that in my mind. I don't understand. Could you? I know it's, you know, we can't really capsulize it in this few minutes, but do the best you can to try to explain that, you know, with the time that we got. Please.
Brother Darrin, you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, I think it's just the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. That is damage. If you look at every one of us, man, you could tell that we are essentially the child of rape, one way, shape, or form. As you see the guys going through, and people are going through and doing a lot of DNA tests, they're finding out that a lot of their blood is from the Iberian Peninsula. A lot of their blood comes from England, from Scotland, and that's just a result of the the invader, the colonizer, all those, you know, whatever you want to call them, coming in and taking black folks and putting, you know, enslaving us. And so when that happens, there's a severe amount of trauma that a people need to overcome. And that's where we are now, is we are just now overcoming a lot of that trauma. We've been able to become educated enough and move through to understand psychologically what our ailments are and understand them just enough to be able to address them and to address these issues that we have. So that's the issue that, you know, that's kind of what brings us to that. And that's what's going to bring us forward, is the ability to have the intellectual conversation to say, these are the issues that we are. This is why we have light-skinned sisters, light-skinned brothers. This is why some of us have curly hair and other of us have really kinky hair. This is why. These are the reasons why.
Yeah, that's well said, D. That's that. Now, when we talk about ancient Egypt, when it went from the amazing things that Egypt did, also the Songhai Empire in the 15th century, they were an amazing group of people in West Africa. The Nok culture, when you look at their architecture, their pottery, their masks, how intricate it was. The reason why we would, quote unquote, fail as it is perceived was more so in annexation. A lot of Europeans were annexed because the idea of racism was different on the continent as opposed to North Africa. When we talk about South, Central, and North Africa, we have a unique diasporitic story. We were byproducts of colonialism, and then we were further sodomized and taken away from our historical marker. However, the continental Africans still had ancient continental markers to define their identity. In Northern America, not including Central and South, we have a major identity crisis that has been robbed from us for over 450 years. Well, as juxtaposed to Africa, the continent, it was not as abrupt. It was done under overt and covert inclusion, because a lot of those European and Eurasian people were mating back with continental African women, henceforth creating a different multicultural group of people that carried on different traditions. And over a period of time, then it became usurped because of geopolitical military complexes. This is the same thing that you see with the American government. These are geopolitical military complexes, starting with Persia, the vacillation of Palestine, Palestine becoming your modern day Jews that were annexed as vassals into the Roman Greco Church that created the Catholic Church. And then from the Catholic Church, you had the Protestant Jews that created your modern day Protestant Christians that are prevalent in Northern America, with a small mixture of Catholics. From the Protestant Christians that were mainly Jews, then you had the Reformists, which became the Arabic Islamists of Islam. And then when Islam, the ancient form of Islam, which was Bedouism and Sufi, then became military enclaves as your modern day Sufi, the Islamabad, the Israeli people. These people were then annexed into a military enclave called Islam. So during that progression, you had a lot of the continental Africans, especially in the Northeast area, that were watered down because of military inclusion. So what that means is, even with the advent of Constantine and the Protestant Christians, they would come with military. So the military would enforce sanctions with vassals that then would be redactors of any ancient information and render it to a government religion. And so that's when you started losing the stronghold of cultural interpretation of religion through continental Africans.
I want to elaborate a little more on losing stronghold. It kind of gets me to my next question. Prince Hall, why don't we hear more about a gentleman or male, strong, prominent black male like a Prince Hall? I've never heard of him until I started looking up Freemasonry, until I got involved and interested in what it's really about. Because like I said, you hear nothing but negative throughout my lifetime. You hear nothing but negative, and it had to be deeper than that. So I started looking it up myself, and this name was prominent, and I was interested in that man. But you hear nothing about this man, and that goes for a lot of our prominent black figures. Like I said in a number of podcasts, a lot of our history starts on a slave ship, which is farthest from the truth. So let's begin talking about the negative connotations between Freemasonry, and let's start at Prince Hall. Why don't you hear more about the man that's Prince Hall? Anyone could take that.
Okay. Yeah. You don't hear much about Prince Hall, similarly because of racism and domination. Prince Hall initially was annexed to the Scottish Rite. He was part of the Scottish Rite Masonry and was a Freemason. However, in his own independent study, he found that there were cultural inconsistencies, primarily during the Civil War times. When we were going into the Civil War, a lot of indentured slaves were given clemency paperwork to become a Federalist, which today we all are employees of the federal government as we fill out 1040s. All right, we all have social numbers and things of that nature. So in exchange for the slavery, you were given serfdom. And Prince Hall saw serfdom as a way to organize black men in order to move families away from the South. So Masonry became a social political movement during the time of Prince Hall, to the point that he argued with the Masonic Congress that Africans, not only were they not represented properly in the Scottish Rite, they were not given an African rite, because why was it called a Scottish Rite? Well, that's because of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, what are called WASPs, that started the Scottish Rite Masonry coming into the 13 colonies. So Prince Hall, being a well-studied person, saw that, created an argument, and actually won the argument, and was given the right to create Lodge number 459 out of an African lodge. The issue was social political encampment, not having the influence of other black men and other black women to be able to organize it on a large scale, because most of those people were serfs. So quite naturally, they would not give him the publicity that he wanted. As he started that movement, as evolution came about, you had other black Masons that were very prominent, particularly John G. Jones, who started the first African-American Shrine Lodge, where he got charter actually from the Arabic Order of the Mystic Shrine and also the Egyptian Order of the Mystic Shrine. So people took Prince Hall's archetype and started evolving the ability to represent themselves as black Masons, which gave way to Ancient, Free, and Accepted and International. And so Prince Hall was accepted, but he was looked at as an irregular lodge until around maybe 2007, 2008. They were actually annexed into the Grand Lodge. However, if Prince Hall was still living, he probably wouldn't have done that. He probably would have disagreed to annexing with, and I'm only giving you an assumption based on my experience in Masonry, because I happen to be a deputy potentate and a Shriner. So at that particular time, with my qualifications, I can tell you that he would have not agreed to join Scottish Rite, because it would have taken his right to stand out as an African. It has nothing to do or nothing against Scottish Rite Masonry, but we're talking about Prince Hall here. He was very socially, politically astute and revolutionary towards the non-inclusion of Black people in Masonry.
So when and where did that that transition occur? Because you say Prince Hall, if he was alive now, no way that would have happened. So when did that transition occur?
Well, right around 1784, he composed a lodge predominantly of African Americans. There were still some Europeans that would actually part of the Prince Hall annexation because he had a mixed heritage. So he was not completely African. This is really after going into the antebellum period, where American-born Africans were outnumbering continental Africans 3-1 at that time. So that's when the split started happening, because the majority of people were mixed people. They were not just a continental African. And so at that time, genetics and things of that nature were based on looking at a person. That's why you would have these terms like quadroon, because a quadroon would have a quarter of African in them. Octoroon, because they would consider them having an eighth. Or a mulatto, they would consider them being 50, half white, half Black. They didn't have the technology that we had today. So it would appear that Prince Hall was being swept under the rug, but he was respected in the Masonic world. It was just internationally that he wasn't publicly spoke of.
Right.
I see it. Oh God, real quick. Let me just jump in and ask this real quick question, random. Marcus Garvey, he sounds so familiar to Prince Hall. Do you know if he was a student of Prince Hall, or if Marcus Garvey was a Freemason himself?
No, I don't have knowledge of that, but he was in a Freemasonry sect coming out of the Church of Ethiopia, the Coptic sector, that does have their own version of Freemasonry.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just one more question, then I guess we can wrap it up. I know brothers got stuff to do, as well as myself. What's the recruitment process? I don't really see, like, maybe I just haven't been in the right area, but how are people recruited into the lodge? And what type of people, I never got any invites. You know what I mean? I know Sam Matt did say he had one, years back. He was telling me, a brother that he knew. But so yeah, talk about the recruitment, man. How does one do you recruit? Is what I should say. Not that I'm looking to join or anything, but
go ahead, Darrin. You can go ahead, man.
Well, generally, man, it's someone that is your friend. And we start with friendship first. So you look at the person and say, all right, this person's my friend, this person who I would be willing to lay down my life for. And then you say, hey, I want to introduce this person to my other friends, because I know we would all work together to accomplish this one goal, one task. And that's upliftment. That's upliftment of Black people as we climb. So, and that's first and foremost.
yeah, and I appreciate, man, y'all answering the questions, like y'all did. That's real dope. I understand certain things can't be, delved into for certain reasons, but yeah, man, I appreciate it. That's pretty much all I got, man. Sam, man, if you got, want to say a few things on the way out, man, I'm good.
Yeah, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I do have some more questions written down on my notebook, but I'll keep them for private conversation at the end of the day.
Right.
Real quick, before we get up out of here, man, we got us all together. You know what I mean? We got something real dope and special lined up for everyone out there watching on the Uncensored Truth Podcast, Viral Hip Hop News Uncensored. So the floor is y'all's real quick as we promote the awesome product that we got going on. Brother Darrin, if you want to start and let them know about the mentorship, if they like what they saw right here, if they heard our other previous conversations, we got some real dope for them. Brother Darrin, if you want to talk to them about it, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, we actually have we got a mentorship class that's going to start up. We're going to cover all aspects of business, business around YouTube, SEO, finance, building a business, banking, you name it. We're going to cover it, and they're going to have we're going to have office hours where people can come in and ask questions and get real education. We're going to have certifications. So you'll be, at the end of the day, you'll say, hey, I achieved this certification in this area. And so it's going to be something that a group of professionals have put together and to be able to take people to the next level. Because again, we're friends, and we're going to be lifting each other and lifting our people as we climb. So again, it's how it works.
Right. No. Yeah. I was just looking through the. Sorry, but go ahead, Brother Khonsu. I was looking in the chat room real quick. A little battle going on, but.
Yeah, definitely. With the mentorship group, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's going to help deal with our generational degradation by creating friendship and building each other up on a positive note, especially dealing with finance, understanding financial, understanding from a one-on-one level, knowing how to create a budget, knowing learning and understanding home economics, childhood development through finance. Just a lot of, the fundamental skills that we're missing in this society.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited. We're excited to be a part of the mainly the YouTube, part, because we're gonna, walk people through, how to build a channel from A to Z. Not only build it, but successfully maintain it. You know what I mean? And whether you got a business or trying to start, you got a product or something, we're gonna show you. That's the difference between just having a book. It was a little years ago when I was learning about credit repair. It was something called the Credit Seekers Bible. They actually had a forum, and I was able to go to the forum, and type in different questions. It made a world of difference rather than just reading a book. And because it's like a car. You can have a manual, like I was saying earlier, but sometimes stuff is a little bit different. It might be, you know what I mean? This nut might be, it might not come out. It's different things, you know what I mean? So it helps to have us people that are going through it and have been through it to be able to consult with. So I can't wait to get started.
Indeed. I'll close with, when you got 127,000 here of our hip hop news, when you got over 350,000 over there hip hop news uncensored, when you got SEO, when you got finances, when you got the full circle coming to you with a very, very, very good price, it would be crazy not to join. If you look at it over a year, if you really develop and really just look at the numbers, it only makes sense to do this. We're hands-on. We'll be right there with you, building the curriculum. We're true testimony of what you're seeing right here, watching us go through our journey together, man. So if you really are interested in developing your platform, developing your business, developing yourself, just take a chance on this and we got you. We promise.
Out of here, everybody listening, hit the like button and make sure that you share this video for us. And yeah, man, we out. Appreciate your time, Darrin and Brother Khonsu. We will be in touch, man. Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks for everybody in the chat room on Uncensored Podcast. We out of here.
Peace.